Yeah, and that story that you mentioned about going to Vancouver and serving at Regent College was actually very fascinating to me as you wrote about his thought process and how thoughtful he was because Packer could have been anywhere. He was being invited to go to various schools, and he was so thoughtful around where he's going to be spending his academic career, where he's going to be teaching. And then what I thought also interesting that you pointed out was that not only did he want to make sure his family situation was going to be happy, that everyone felt like, yeah, this was going to be a good move. That was super important to him, which is very like a beautiful thing that Packer was like, I want to make sure
Mm.
my family is going to be happy wherever we move. So that was a huge consideration. And the other one that you mentioned in your book is that he was hesitant also about the church situation, that he was very much wanted to make sure there was an Anglican parish that he can go to. And you mentioned St. John's.
Mm.
But I thought it was very interesting that, because sometimes you think about like when you're taking a job, you're thinking about, well, there's the prestige of going to a certain university, being in a certain place. Um, but for him, it was also about spiritual life and where was he going to be nurtured spiritually. Can you talk a little bit about his move to Vancouver and you just mentioned his family situation, but also like the spiritual situation of him for him.
Yes, it's a very good question. Let's talk about that. I mean, I was in a very fortunate position as a biographer. First of all, I was based in Oxford, so I knew an awful lot of people. And then around this time, I began to build links with Regent College, Vancouver. So I got to know the people there. One of the people I got to know was James Houston, who used to be at Oxford and then went to be in effect, founding principal of Regent College, Vancouver. And I was able to have those conversations with people to really help me see what the bigger picture was. And Jim was very unhappy about one aspect of theological education in Britain, which was it tended to be a principal and then underdogs, members of staff who did the teaching. And Jim felt very strongly there had to be a more collegial atmosphere, rather like in American faculties. And so he was looking for somewhere where they'd have this more open faculty type structure. But he preferred Canada to the United States because, if you like, it's midway between British culture and American culture. He felt that actually that would work. And here's what you need to know. You're right about Jim and church life. Jim wanted to be not an academic theologian, but somebody who interfaced with the church. Therefore, there had to be a congregation in which he could minister and do useful things. So that's a very important thing. But the other thing which is really significant was he wanted to work for somebody he could trust, somebody who in effect he felt was a known person. And Packer and James Houston knew each other. They went back to the 1940s. Would you believe it? So
Wow.
that's it. I mean, they really were very old friends. In fact, Jim Houston gave the eulogy at Jim's funeral service in Vancouver, as I'm sure you know. That the friendship was that old, and in his eulogy address, James Houston described Packer as his oldest friend, and he was.
Mm.
So, see, when James Houston said to Packer, "Look, will you think of coming to Regent College, Vancouver?" Well, they knew each other. They knew they could work together. The issue was, would he like Regent College? And so, of course, he had to go and find out. But basically, this is all about a calling. It's not a career move. Is this what I think fits in with my vision of what God is calling me to do? Which is about teaching, it's about writing books, and it's about ministering to congregations. And he wanted all three, and he got them
Mm.
there. Which is why in the more recent book, I describe his period at Vancouver as being golden years, because actually it was a very happy time. He was very settled, very productive. It was a very important period of his life.
Yeah, and what a decision. And you write about that complicated decision because he did go back and forth. Um, so I didn't know like interesting about that friendship was so long that obviously was very influential in helping him like you said, the trust factor. Is this a place where I'll enjoy being? And him getting that feedback from a friend, like saying, I think you're going to like it here and here's why. And so I think that's very, very, very pivotal. And also like, wasn't Regent College at the time fairly new? I think you wrote about Pinnock was there. Um, So it was a fairly kind of a new institution at that
It was
time.
a new institution, and also, I mean, most people nowadays know about Regent College. In those days, they did not. One of the things Jim Packer did was to make it famous because, he was a very big fish in at Regent College, but he was not interested in going to a prestigious institution. He wanted to go somewhere where he felt he could do what needed to be done. And if you're an author and a speaker, well, you can kind of use a place as a base from which to go and teach elsewhere. But I think Jim felt that there was a church link that was good. He'd be able to write, he'd be able to speak. But he also felt that under James Houston, Regent College would go somewhere. And he was very happy to be part of that process of growth and rise to fame. And actually, I mean, there are many very good people at Regent, but Jim, I think, did play a particularly important role in putting it on the map.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's interesting, like that that choice, because you think about like somebody in Packer's position really could go anywhere. He could definitely be speaking at and having a nice position at a prestigious university like in Oxford, like very easily. And making a decision to go to a kind of a newer school and like be part of that process. That is so important to Packer, like to be part of this very important process of setting up a proper
Mm.
school. It speaks a lot to his character because he obviously could have been to like he could have been in Oxford and teaching there and been very very happy. Um, but he was very much he wanted to do something and to help shape a school like Regent.
I think it's a very good exercise in discerning vocation. Where am I meant to be? And one obvious answer is to go somewhere famous because that's great. I think Jim was thinking more in terms of where will I be most useful? Where can I do the things that I now believe God is asking me to do? And if we look at Jim's career, for example, he didn't want to be a theological educationist. Then, through a year he spent doing something at a place in North London, he discovered he could teach and began to realize maybe I could do that. And throughout his life, we see maybe I could do that. This needs to be done. Maybe I could do it. It's all about, if you like, not a master plan from day one, but rather an emerging vision of who he was, what his gifts were, and how he could use these. And as I look at his trajectory, it makes perfect sense he ended up at Regent College in Vancouver, and that was right. But nobody could have predicted that because this is all about emerging. Vocation is not a single flash of insight. You see exactly what
Mhm.
your path looks like. If you like, it's this stage, this step, this step. It's gradual. And that's what I found so fascinating about Jim's career, the way in which at each stage he's saying, I think I'm being asked to do this. And testing, seeing if it's right. And he stayed for a long time in Vancouver because he felt this is where I'm meant to be.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Dogado podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.